Hello everyone and welcome back to Philosophical Fridays. This is the show where I take a big philosophical question, I break it down, and hopefully by the end of the video we have an answer. So, this week's question is, should the death penalty be allowed? Should it be legal? And my answer is only in kind of extreme circumstances. And so for those of you who haven't heard, the last alive brother from the Boston Marathon bombings was sentenced to death recently, and I don't believe in saying these guys' names because I don't believe in aiding in their 15 minutes of fame, but he was sentenced to death. And I think what's really interesting about this case is that Massachusetts is really against the death penalty relatively. When they were doing the jury selection for this trial, they intentionally selected jurors who would be willing to sentence to death, if they found him beyond reasonable doubt that he did it. And I thought that was really interesting that they intentionally selected a jury who would be willing to sentence him to death, because I believe in the circumstances that we're looking here, a bombing, a terrorist bombing, I believe that it is fitting that he should be sentenced to death. So I'm really mixed feelings about it, because at the same time, this is a really bad person who I believe who should be sentenced to death, but at the same time, I'm not really that big of a proponent of the death penalty. My thoughts are kind of mixed on the death penalty in general, but I feel like in extenuating circumstances like this, the terrorist bombing, a death penalty is suitable. So what really kind of made me feel very mixed about the death penalty was a movie called Dead Man Walking. And it's a really good movie, especially if you're interested, in kind of the ethics of the death penalty. So basically, spoiler, what happens in the movie is that this guy named Matthew Ponslett is accused of, I believe, raping and murdering a couple, and he's put on death row. And Sister Bergeron, who is a big activist against the death penalty, I believe she actually had something to do with this case, tries her hardest to get him off the death penalty, and no matter what she does, she can't get him off the death penalty. And she doesn't know that he didn't actually commit the crimes. We, as the audience, see flashbacks throughout the movie, so we know that he actually committed the crime. I don't think he actually knows that he commits the crime, because he's kind of like Robert Durst in the fact that he tells himself continuously that, he didn't do it. And I think he actually convinces himself that he really didn't do it. So, Sister Bergeron is fighting hard throughout the movie to get him off the death penalty. And there was a really great scene towards the end of the movie where he's on death row. He knows that he's gonna die, and Sister Bergeron says to him, is there anything you want to confess to free your soul before, you go up? And he admits to doing it. It's a really emotional scene, and he finally realizes that he committed the crime. But he's very remorseful. He's crying. Both him and Sister Bergeron are crying. And it's a really emotional scene, really well done by both the actors. But it really makes you second guess your thoughts on the death penalty, You really think someone who rapes and murders people deserves to be sentenced to death, which I do, because it was really horrendous what he does throughout the flashbacks in the movie. I believe he did deserve to be sentenced to death. But watching that scene, they're both crying. He's really remorseful. He's upset about what he did. And the whole point of that scene is supposed to make you second guess your thoughts on the death penalty, and it really does a good job of doing that. And it's kind of like, this is someone who I feel like, I don't know, given the proper recuperation, could become a useful member of society. He's upset, he's remorseful, and even when at the end of the movie they sentence him to death, and there's no sense of justice done. I mean, you could see the families there of the daughter, I believe, who was raped and murdered, and he's not even happy with that. He sees him killed, and it doesn't make him feel any better. It doesn't. Sentencing Matthew Ponslett to death didn't do anything for him, really, because his daughter is still dead. It didn't do anything for him to see this guy get the death penalty, even though it's really the justice he deserved. It didn't do anything for him, and I feel like sentencing this guy to death, it's not going to bring any of the people who unfortunately died in the Boston Marathon bombings back to life. And I believe that in this circumstance it's right, but really, unless it's extremes in circumstances like this, I don't believe it should be used. It's really kind of, it's hard because I don't feel like I should be the judge of who lives and who dies, and I've always been a firm believer in that. So it would be really hard for me to be on a jury of a case like this because I want to be in charge of deciding whether this guy lives or dies. I wasn't there at the trial. I don't know what it was like. I can't imagine. This guy, from what I've heard, wasn't really very remorseful about what he did, and that's ultimately a big part of the decision why they decided to sentence him to death. And it's really hard to decide, what is the right decision here. And I mean, there have been people who have been sentenced to death who didn't actually commit the crime that they were sentenced to death for, and I think that's another part of the reason why I'm kind of against the death penalty. So it's just really hard to say, is the death penalty really the right answer? Because at the same time, keeping someone locked up in a federal penitentiary costs taxpayers a lot of money, and these are pretty much the worst criminal scum that are alive. So, why should we pay taxpayer dollars to keep these people in a federal penitentiary? And I believe that's a really valid point. I mean, it's hard to refute that, but at the same time, people like Sister Joan, who, really fight hard against the death penalty, wouldn't believe that. I mean, she has some really great points as well, that sentencing someone to death really doesn't fix anything. It's not very, very good. She's a very religious person. She doesn't really believe that it gives you the ability to kind of cleanse the soul and stuff like that. So I want to know what you guys think about the death penalty. Should it outright be legal or illegal? Do you think there are certain circumstances where it should be legal, like I do, really only in, kind of really extreme circumstances? I want to know what you guys think about the death penalty down in the comments below. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.